With this morning being a reunion assembly, the first reunion assembly for the year, we will begin the assembly with the singing of the school song. Please all stand. Thank you. Please be seated. A very warm word of welcome to the 25 old boys and their partners from the class of 1963 to this very special assembly today for their 60-year reunion. In particular to those members who have traveled from overseas. Of the group today, we have old boys who have traveled from Amsterdam, the United States, and Addis Ababa. To you in particular, a very warm word of welcome and thank you for making the effort to be here. This assembly is also being live streamed. To all those who have joined us from far and wide, a very warm welcome to all of you as well. While you cannot be with us in person, the effort you have made to join us at this assembly is deeply appreciated by your classmates. Also, a particular word of welcome to those members of the reunion group who joined me on the stage this morning. On my right-hand side, on my immediate right is Mr. John Duff, and on his right-hand side is Dr. Ian Hay. Both Mr. Duff and Dr. Hay will be part of the proceedings later in the assembly, and I will introduce them to you more fully a little bit later on. The stories told and the sentiments shared with the boys at these reunions are a very important part of maintaining the traditions and the legacy of our school. To have old boys of 30, 40, 50, 60, and after a reunion assembly last year, even 70 reunion groups returned to the school, shares a very important message with our boys. It assists in emphasizing the fact that their relationship is anything but a 5-year relationship with the school, and it helps to share with them the fact that attending the school is no ordinary experience. In particular, this assembly is a special one for our Form 1 group, who are over the year and years ahead will experience many of these assemblies, but today is their first. An important event as they continue to learn and understand what it means to be a Boys High boy during their first year of school. Well, we welcome you to the school this morning and have arranged this special assembly at a different time of the day. The rest of the school day has gone ahead completely as per normal. You will obviously notice that much has changed in the 60 years since you attended the school, but at the same time, it is our hope that certain things will have remained the same. A very warm word of welcome to all of you back to the school on the hill. It gives me great pleasure to also welcome special guests who have been invited by the class of 1963 to join this assembly and lunch this afternoon. Firstly, to Mr. Bill Schroeder, former headmaster of the school, from 1990 through to 2010. It is always a great honor to have you visit the school and attend these assemblies with us, sir. It's wonderful to have you back today, and we hope to see a lot more of you during the course of the year as you continue to be invited to these special occasions. Also, a very warm word of welcome to Mr. Tony Wilkes, a very special guest of the class of 1963. Mr. Wilkes has a long association with the school and is possibly the oldest old boy of the school, having matriculated here in 1946. As always, Mr. Wilkes, a very warm welcome to you. Also a schoolmaster from 1963 who's been invited to join the group, Mr. Clinton Harrop Allen, a very warm welcome to you too, sir. All of you are very welcome at this assembly. To all our guests today, a very warm welcome back to Pretoria Boys High School. I share with you the cultural results from the course of the week. I begin with debating. Congratulations to both our senior debating teams for making it through to the quarterfinals of the Athenaeum Debating League. The Pines team is made up of Alex Sick, Tando Mushompela, Michael Lovell, and Noam Bini. The Komorka team is made up of Junior Matluli, Datus Dupriya, Hassan Hassan, Imran Dagama, and Benjamin Rotenbach. We look forward to watching their progress going ahead. Chess results: under 19 A team beat Greenwood College 6-0, and under 19 B team lost 1.5 to 2.5 points against Afrikaans Hoërseens. Junior City Council, we are proud to announce that the following boys will represent Pretoria Boys High School on the Pretoria Junior City Council for the term of 2023 and 2024. From our Form 4 group, Ave Mokonko and Marie Rogers, and from our Form 3 group, David Pieterse and Edward van Grenen. We congratulate these boys, as well as those boys who participated in chess and debating. Well done, boys. Our Cultural Man of the Week, congratulations to Matthew Moorhouse, he's a Form 5 boy in Sunnyside House, for placing first out of 238 archers in the Riebeck Rand archery competition on the 22nd of April, and for placing first out of 146 archers at the Wildcrete archery competition on the 6th of May. Both these competitions were Gauteng-based inter-schools events in which a minimum of 5 events is needed for an archer to qualify for nationals with an average score of 280. From the results that Matthew has achieved thus far, with an average of 290.5, he is well on his way to performing at the national competition. I call Matthew Moorhouse to the stage to receive the Cultural Man of the Week Trophy Award. Well done. On the 22nd of April, the Science Club competed in the Pretoria SACE Aquilarium Water Competition. The SACE stands for South African Institute of Civil Engineering. It was hosted at Hoërskool Oostmoed. The competition required the boys to build a pipe network that delivered water to 3 different locations at the same rate. Pretoria Boys High School sent 2 teams to the competition, and one of the teams was placed first overall. The Pretoria Boys High School team that won the competition will now represent the school at the national finals on the 2nd of June in Johannesburg. The winning team consisted of Luke Lowe, Arcadia Form 3, Michael Milan, Townhouse Form 3, and Philip Ansbach, Hofmeyer House Form 1. Further to this achievement, the Science Club also entered a global science experiment run by the Royal School of Science. Mr. Trutte and the Science Club team competed in experiments that had to do with the uploading of data to the RCSC website to color South Africa on the map of participating countries. The Science Club competed in a global science experiment, the Take Charge experiment, where they built several chemical batteries. The boys measured the voltages of batteries in different solutions, including saline, vinegar, sodium hydroxide, and sulfuric acid. The results were compiled and uploaded to the RCS website. This made Boys High part of nearly 15,000 participants worldwide, and the club was awarded a certificate for this valuable contribution to science. Well done to all of our boys in the Science Club, and a special word of thanks to Mr. Trutte for being the driving force behind the success of this club. I call on Clement Lawasimpija, the chairman of the Science Club, on stage to receive the Cultural Club of the Week trophy. Well done to all these boys. I share with you some sports results from fixtures that took place during the course of the week. Table tennis, our first table tennis beat Hoërskool Swartkorps 24 games to 6. Our second team lost to Swartkorps 22 games to 8. Our second team beat the Chinese school 18 games to 12. And our second team beat Hoërskool Oeverkruin 16 games to 14. There were 2 hockey matches played during the course of the week. Our sixth team beat the Tiger Valley first team 3-2, and our under-16F hockey team lost to the Tiger Valley under-16A team 3-0. Congratulations to all these boys who participated. Well done. I have one Colors Award to share with you. While we did make the announcement of athletics colors a few weeks ago, there is a young man who has subsequently run one of the qualifying athletics times, and it gives me great pleasure to announce this morning that Lima Maruma receives half colors this morning for the 400 meters. We congratulate Lima. Well done. Our sportsman and sports team of the week. This week, the under-16B goalkeeper, Jude Robertson, wins the award as the sportsman of the week for his team's 3-1 victory over Hilton during the course of the weekend. His outstanding performance in the goals saved a number of chances of Hilton scoring, and he played a very important role in this result. We congratulate Jude on this fine performance. Well done. The sports team of the week, the under-14A team wins the award for the sports team of the week, under-14A rugby team that is. During the course of the weekend, they had a very gutsy performance, drawing their match against Hilton College 22-all. During the course of the match, the leading team changed on 4 different occasions, with Pretoria Boys High School having to score at the death and convert the try in order to pull even. And this is exactly what they did. After a very gutsy performance, I ask the captain, Xavier Martin, to please come to the stage as we congratulate the under-14A rugby team. It is another very busy weekend of sport, boys. I'm going to share with you the arrangements for the sports fixtures over the weekend, and now particularly for the hockey. Please listen carefully. All the matches being played tomorrow are either against Northcliffe or St. Benedict's. Hockey games will be played both at home and away, but please note that for the hockey fixtures, there are 3 venues. Matches will be played at Pretoria Boys High School, Northcliffe High School, as well as St. Benedict's. The first matches at St. Benedict's and Pretoria Boys High will start at 7:30. And the first hockey team will play the main game on the St. Benedict's A field at 10:30. The first hockey matches at Northcliffe High School start at 8:30. The teams playing at St. Benedict's are the first team, the third team, and the fifth team. The under-16A and B teams, the under-14A and C teams. The teams playing here at Pretoria Boys, the 6th and 7th teams, and the under-16D and E teams, as well as the under-14D team. And then the teams playing hockey at Northcliffe High School will be the 2nd team and the 4th team, as well as the under-16C team and the under-14B team. The transport arrangements for the hockey fixtures. There will be 1 set of buses going through to St. Benedict's. These buses will leave from the loch at 5 to 6. So it's a very early start, boys. Boys must please meet at the loch at 5:45. The following teams will be on these buses: the first team, third team, and fifth team, under 16A and B, under 14A and C. There'll be one set of buses going to Northcliffe. This bus will leave from the Loch parking area at 6:45. All boys must please be at the Loch by 6:30. The following teams are going to Northcliffe, the second and fourth team, under 16C and under 14B teams. The rugby arrangements. All the matches are being played away on Saturday against St. Benedict's College and Northcliffe High School, but all of the matches are being played at St. Benedict's. The first matches start at 7:30, and the first rugby team will play the main game on the St. Benedict's A team at 2:10. The teams playing at St. Benedict's on Saturday are the first to the 8th team, the under 16A to E teams, the under 15A to F teams, and the under 14A to F teams. The transport arrangements for the rugby: there will be two sets of buses going through to St. Benedict's. The first set of buses will leave from the Loch parking area at 5:45. Boys must please be at the Loch at 5:45. I've mentioned the teams that are playing at St. Benedict's. The teams on the first bus need to be the following: the fourth team, fifth team, sixth team, seventh team, and eighth team. The under 16 A, B, D, and E teams. The under 14 A, B, D, and E teams. And the under 14 A, B, C, D, E, and F teams. The second set of buses will leave from the Loch parking area at 9:30. Boys must meet at the Loch at 9:15. The following teams are on the second set of buses: the first team, second team, and third teams. The under 16C team, under 15C team, and the under 15F team. Please, gentlemen, I've mentioned the early times of these buses. You cannot be late. You keep the entire group back, and then we start, which is a very early start to the day. We start all of those matches late. Please ensure you're on time for the buses, and as always, please ensure that you're correctly dressed in your full school tracksuit. The spectator bus will leave from the Loch at 7:15. All border spectators must meet at the Loch parking area at 7 o'clock. I remind all the spectators that you are to be dressed in your formal uniform. As per requirement from the school, all staff members are pleased to ensure that there's a staff member from each team that is on the bus with your team. It's a very busy weekend, gentlemen. It's wonderful to see so many fixtures being played. I know the sports department goes to a lot of effort to fill these fixtures. You'll notice that St. Benedict's, against whom the main fixture is, doesn't have the number of teams that we have. So a huge amount of effort is made to get matches for all the teams, which we've done this weekend. I wish you a good weekend out on the sports field. I know you will play well on the field and represent the school very well off the field. We now turn our attention to the 60-year reunion group. During the 1950s and 60s, while the gentlemen who are with us this morning were attending the school, South Africa was a very interesting place. The National Party was elected to power in 1948 and adopted the policy of apartheid. This would obviously have a huge impact on everyone living and growing up in the country at the time. In 1963, the head of the National Party was State President C.R. Swart, and his Prime Minister was Hendrik Verwoerd. Between 1963 and 1964, the Rivonia trial was carried out, where 12 members of the African National Congress were accused under the 1962 Sabotage Act with sabotage and attempting to violently overthrow the South African government, crimes that carried the death penalty. As part of the worldwide resistance to apartheid in 1963, the Israeli government informed the United Nations Special Committee on Apartheid that it had taken all the necessary steps to ensure that no arms, ammunition, or strategic materials were to be exported from Israel to South Africa in any form, directly or indirectly. In the same year, the United Nations Security Council also passed a resolution calling for an arms embargo on South Africa. These were testing and tying crimes in which you attended school. In 1963, the exchange rate would allow 1 rand to buy you 2 pounds. Today, 1 pound will cost you 24 rand. 60 years ago, goods that cost 100 rand will today cost 1,034 rand. Bread was 9 cents a loaf. Meal was 6 cents a kilogram. Petrol was 60 cents a litre. And those of you who frequented the koppie when you should not have were paying 19 cents for a packet of cigarettes. In other parts of the world in 1963, noteworthy events, which I'm sure many of you will remember, include the following. Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington, D.C. at a rally of over 200,000 people. US President J.F. Kennedy gave his famous "Ich bin ein Berliner" speech in Berlin. He was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas in November of the same year. 2 days later, Oswald was shot by Jack Ruby, a nightclub owner, sparking many conspiracy theories about what really was the cause of Kennedy's death. The top music hit in 1963 was Surfin' USA by the Beach Boys. The top grossing movie in 1963 was Cleopatra, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. The first Porsche 911 was produced in 1963, and audio cassettes were introduced for the first time. An audio cassette is something our boys would not be familiar with today. In 1963, Valencia Tereshkova from the USSR became the first woman in space. She spent 3 days orbiting the Earth in the Vostok 6 spaceship. In 1963, in the UK, the Great Train Robbery took place. The thieves made off with £2.5 million, the equivalent today of over £30 million, most of which has never been recovered. In 1963, IBM introduced the first removable computer hard drive with a storage capacity of 2.6 megabytes. Other firsts include the computer mouse, the push-button phone, instant coffee, tab cool drink, and the cereal Fruit Loops. If we look at Pretoria Boys High School in 1963, headmaster, Mr. Desmond Abernethy, head boy, Mr. John Duff, deputy head boy, Ricky Bewelder. Number of prefects in 1963, 19. Today we have 33. Number of boys in the school, 989. Today there are 1,500. Number of academic staff, 47. In 2023, we have 107. Admin staff, in 1963, 4. Today we have 29. School fees. In 1963, as a state school, no school fees were charged, although payment was expected for boarding. Today, school fees are 64,700 rand for tuition, and boarding costs parents 80,600 rand. In 1963, there were 6 houses, 3 day houses, Arcadia, Sunnyside in town, and 3 boarding houses, School, Solomon, and Rissik. Today we have 10 houses with the addition of Armstrong, Abernethy, Matheson, and Hofmeyer houses. All the flags for the houses you will see hanging in the hall above you. From a sporting perspective, in 1963, the 1963 first rugby team played 14 matches. You won 6, drew 1, and lost 7. Against King Edward's, you won 16-11. Against Jeppe, you lost 5-12. And against Affis, you lost 5-6. Hockey matches, your first team in 1963 played 10 matches. You won 7, drew 1, and lost 2. Against King Edward High School, you lost 1-0. Against Jeppe, you won 3-1. And at that stage, Affis were not yet playing hockey. A significant event in the history of the school in 1963, and one which you will all remember very well, was the original school hall being demolished and the building commencing of the new school hall. Due to this, the valediction ceremony of that year, as well as the matric exams, were held in the halls at Pretoria University, and for the same reason, there was no school production in 1963. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the 2 gentlemen on the stage with me this morning. I begin with Dr. Hay. Dr. Hay will be the guest speaker today. and Mr. Duff will do the Bible reading and devotions. Dr. Hay was a Sunnyside boy from 1959 through to 1963. His main interest was in the bugle band, where he became the trumpet major. He played the last post from the bell tower on Remembrance Day, and this remains a very special moment which he remembers well. At school, Dr. Hay was a sporting enthusiast, playing cricket, rugby, and hockey, although he says his sporting achievements were nothing more than modest. He remembers making the top 30 in cross-country on one occasion. Academically, he managed to retain his place in the A form class, but describes himself as simply an ordinary boys' high boy. Dr. Hay is most proud of his family's commitment to the school. His father was a pupil here in the 1920s and 30s and was a governor at the school. His brother Gordon was head prefect in 1965, and his son studied here in the 1980s. During his time as a parent at Pretoria Boys High School, Dr. Hay also served as a governor for 10 years under Malcolm Armstrong, and as he describes him, the amazing Mr. Schroeder. At school, after school, Dr. Hay joined the 1S Battalion in Bloemfontein, where he became a tank driver. After his military service, he attended the University of Pretoria as a medical student. After studying, he married Heather Cooper, who was the sister of John, Peter, and Robbie Cooper, all of whom were Pretoria High School old boys, and together they have 3 children, of which they are very proud. Dr. Hay has had a long and distinguished career as a medical doctor and pediatrician, working both locally and abroad in both the public and private sector, and has also served as a consultant pediatrician and professor at the Universities of Pretoria and Medunsa. He's been living in the UK since 2000, where he has an independent pediatric consulting practice at the Portland Hospital, with teaching appointments at St. Mary's Hospital and Imperial College. He describes his career as a happy one in pre- and postgraduate medical education, health services, and development. He is currently heading towards semi-retirement and in the process trying to get a balance between work and play. He describes himself as a proper Soti, with a heart and head that's rather confused, and someone who, together with his entire family, continues to love the school dearly. Mr. Duff matriculated from Rissik House in 1963. He played first-team cricket and rugby for the school, did athletics for the school, was head of cadets detachment, and was also the head prefect of Pretoria Boys High School in 1963. After leaving school, Mr. Duff immediately commenced his military training at the Pretoria Regiment Armed Corps. After the army, he completed his BA Honours in Psychology from the University of Natal and completed a BA from Wits Graduate School. His early working career in human resource management followed by shorter stints in marketing and sales management. After life in sales and marketing, Mr. Duff headed up a KFC franchise business as their managing director, which launched him into the food and hospitality industry, which he ran and owned a number of hospitality businesses. After spending time in the Eastern Cape, Mr. Duff moved to Hazyview and became involved in running 2 large restaurants, and also spent time helping out on the farm in which he lived, helping grow macadamias, lychees, and granadellas. An opportunity arose for he and his partner Heather to take over a lodge which they very successfully ran for 5 years before it fell victim to the pandemic. Mr. Duff now lives on a resort with his partner, managing the resort. He has a daughter and a son, and is the proud grandfather of 4 grandchildren, 2 of which are a pigeon pair. His hobbies include studying South African history, specifically Anglo-Zulu and Anglo-Boer wars, as well as bird watching. I now ask Dr. Hay to please address us.
Mr. Hastenkamp and Daniel Manley, teachers and boys. I'd like to thank Louis van Broomsen and Peter Gray and the High School Old Boys Association for organizing our reunion and for this extraordinary privilege of being able to address the school on behalf of our leaving group. When we walked into school this morning, we were greeted with, "Morning, sir," by, I suspect, a grade 8 boy. This wonderfully courteous trademark boys' high greeting that had clearly already been instilled into him. I thanked him and I told him that we were here to celebrate our class of 63. He paused, looked at us, and I could see him rather mischievously wondering whether this was the class of 1863 or 1963. You know, we could be considered seriously old boys. Possibly our last reunion, although some stalwarts are already encouraging us to keep going until the 70th. We've got team spirit. We're sort of a grandfather team, or you could call us the Opaspan. And it's great being an old boy. There's no examinations, just lifelong friendships. And the term old boys is interesting because it's got a sort of a crusty, pithy, proud and charming ring about the name, especially Pretoria Boys High School old boys. And next year, some of you will wear that magical badge of honor. In these more woke times, past pupils may be considered the preferred term. But at our vintage, sadly, past rather more commonly gets spelt with 2 S's and 1 D. Some 25 of our cohort of 180 are here today, and it's my privilege to greet you on their behalf. Each of those smiley men up there have got a remarkable story to tell. And there's so many successes. They're farmers, businessmen, international bankers, judges, politicians, ministers of religion, authors, entertainers, conservationists, and then also the most treasured profession of all, that is teachers and lecturers. And of course, amongst our cohort are a few real scoundrels whose life stories may be much more interesting. When we look at Old Boys Association newsletters with group photographs of Old Boys reunions, I couldn't help but think how similar we all look. You know, we're a bit more stooped, we're a bit grayer, we're a bit balder, some of us a little plumper, but we're all a sort of a clone. Now, there's nothing unusual about that in terms of aging, but there's one remarkable difference, and that is they're always all smiling. And that reflects the joy of being back at their alma mater, and particularly being amongst friends, some of the very best that we have ever made. You know, we were the first of the baby boomers. We followed the silent generation, and we were before Generation X. And I was very amused to recently read the defining definition of a baby boomer. And I quote, that this was a time of change. Parents saw their influence rapidly diminishing, and what the parents could teach the children was much less important than what the children already knew and what their parents did not. And I guess that might be true of each successive generation. In the United Kingdom, the cultural overlap between generations is now so thin as to be almost imperceptible. And the online culture in which our children and grandchildren live is actually invisible. I mean, how many of your parents know about chatbots and regenerative artificial intelligence? I wonder. I guess all of you do, and I guess very few of us do. So what was it like 60 years ago, to put matters into some perspective? The physicists say that the division of space-time into past, present, and future is just an illusion. Our only perceived time reality is really the present, as the past may fall victim to revisionist history, and the future is some sort of mystical destiny. And that makes this moment so precious. The South African population was only 17 million when we were born, and it is now some 60 million and growing. And global life expectancy was 54 years old then, and the potential for children born in the 1970s is now over 100 years. So I guess your reunions will stretch into their 80s. So what was school life like then, you might ask? Firstly, it was a whole lot simpler. I remember scrapping for a place in the bicycle sheds as all day boys cycled to school. A few cool fellows had 50cc mopeds. We had to protect our sandwiches from the boarders, especially the Solomon House boarders, who seemed much hungrier than the rest. We had to dodge getting caned because that was a sort of a rite of passage to becoming a man at school, or getting punched by the office boys in the first scrum, and I remember thinking that must have been in their rule book. But we also admired our schoolhouse friends who had successfully bunked out at night and sneaked into Girls' High for a midnight swim, or that's what they called it, without getting caught. You know, in those days, no cell phones, no television, no Google. The matric examinations loomed quite ominously. There was no such thing as planning for a gap year, and we all wondered where we would be conscripted to perform compulsory military service. School in the 60s was still sadly segregated and completely blinkered from the political reality of South Africa. The one political event that I recall was at the time of South Africa being declared a republic in 1961. We all gathered out the front of the school and were expected to zealously wave the South African flags in celebration. The only protester who I was aware of was Michael Simpson, who I'm sure some of you will remember. He became a very well-respected psychiatrist, but unfortunately I've lost track of him. But he was nicknamed Pinky at school because he had a rather sort of cherubic appearance, and he was a liberal. And he had pinned a large Union Jack under his blazer, and when we were expected to sing Die Stem, he exposed his Union Jack and he played God Save the Queen on his mouth organ. It was a very mild protest. You know, I had wondered as a doctor and a teacher of medical students and of specialist pediatricians how I could share something useful with you from our past 60 years and offer you some thoughts as a sort of prescription. And the reason for that is that 5 of you here today will have this very remarkable privilege of addressing the school in 60 years' time. And I'd like you to imagine that it's actually you, and think about how much life will have changed by then, and what might be interesting or useful for you to share with the young men at the school in 2083. Now, what we read about today would have sounded like complete science fiction to us in our school days. We read about meatballs grown from the DNA harvested from woolly mammoths that were extinct 4,000 years ago. And the broken bits of the DNA get supplemented with elephant DNA to make muscle myoglobin, and meatballs can be grown. Or the smart rugby ball that can transmit in real time the distance and direction traveled, the speed of travel, and the rotation speed of the ball in passes. And my challenge to you is to think what you might have to say, and again, just imagine that it is you. So how best to use the next 10 minutes of this very precious space-time? I consulted our eldest grandson, who completed grade 12 last year, as I was concerned that I would be completely out of touch with all of you. And his sage advice was, and I quote, "Grampy, keep it brief. Don't repeat all the motivational talks that the boys will have at school. Just mimic the good teachers who have insight into the issues that matter to the boys. Tell stories from your own life journey that have helped you and that might be useful to them." So I'm going to follow his sage advice. But firstly, allow me very briefly to reflect on your and our great school. Now, recent clips of the introduction of the grade 8s to all the amazing extramural societies, clubs and sporting activities, the headmaster's code, and reports of the outstanding academic achievements, and also our tour through the school today, just confirm how impressive this school is. And why is it great? How has it adapted and improved to achieve such excellence in its mission of education over the past 120 years? And the answer is just so obvious, and that is your teachers. Our headmaster, Desmond Abernethy's book, A School That Is Set on the Hill, and John Ilsley's stunning and very collectible Story of a South African School, and Bill Schroeder's Headmaster Story are books in my library that all answer that question and help us to remind us of this magnificent institution that Peter Hain, who's an ex-old boy, who is was an anti-apartheid campaigner and a member of the House, current member of the House of Lords, says in his book, A Pretoria Boy, that Pretoria Boys High School is the best school in the world. Under Bill Schroeder's headmastership, I had the privilege to serve as a governor for 10 years in the 90s, and that has helped me to stay in touch. One of our proudest achievements then was the opportunity to open the school to all South Africans, to commission the Pollock campus, to extend the bridging courses, and to start bursaries. You know, it was such a self-evident course to take then. And I've recently read a quote from Ron Ware, a scholar activist who's pioneered the study of race and culture in contemporary Britain, and that captured the spirit of those times. And I quote, she says, "We couldn't accept the past and how it affected wealth and opportunity and knowledge production and value systems, or remain doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We couldn't allow guilt and shame to paralyze us into a state of inaction and avoidance." And she draws the distinction between hand-wringing produced by guilt to hand-holding that emerges from solidarity. And Boys High has spectacularly achieved that. This is really a great school, and one of the best factors to success that we could have had, and remember to record that in your own CVs. Now I want to come back to the 5 of you who I've challenged to think that you will be invited to give this address in 60 years' time. And I hope you've been thinking about my challenge. I can't imagine what message you might have for the boys then, but I'd like to be so bold as to predict that there are some important attributes and attitudes that were important to us then, that still are now, and that are likely to be in 60 years' time. So I've tried to distill those for you to consider. Now, to get to my prescription, we only need to think about the school motto, virtute et labore, with courage and effort. And on courage, I'd like to tell you a story from our early days in my medical career relating to a wisdom that I learned from Chief Marishani. But firstly on labor, Malcolm Gladwell, the well-known author of Tipping Point, Where Little Things Can Make a Big Difference, and on his more recent book, Outliers, tells stories about individuals who really succeeded in life. And his definition of success is a wide one that includes happiness, discovery, excellence, philanthropy, recognition, and not just wealth. Gladwell challenges the fact that we are easily misled into thinking that success is a purely individual achievement, and he examines factors that contribute to high levels of success and how every successful person had circumstances that contributed to that success. Pretoria Boys High School is one of those important circumstances that makes a contribution to your success. His key message is that each of the characters had a unique background, but added the 10,000-hour rule that emphasizes the need and the extent to practice the correct way to achieve excellence. And culturally, we seem to have fallen prey to the idea that the world owes us a living, and that the once admirable work ethic has given way to an overriding sense of entitlement and rights. You can't escape the fact that hard work and endeavor will yield dividends. And then to my story about courage. After qualifying at medical school, we lived and worked at the Jane Furrs Memorial Mission Hospital in Sekhukhune that was renamed Leboa in the old apartheid days. As a young doctor, I had the privilege of being invited to Chief Marishani's homestead in order to meet him and pay my respects as our hospital served his people. His homestead was a traditional, rather unpretentious but spotlessly clean Sepedi structure in that very impoverished environment. I was coached by Simon, who was the hospital ambulance driver and my friend, into the correct approach to address a chief. Head bowed, hands clasped, and saying "Koko" loudly, which means "I'm here, I come in friendship, and may I enter." This wonderful opportunity for me to learn. We shared a gourd of marula beer and discussed all sorts of issues. I told the chief of my ambitious plans in life. He listened patiently and then cautioned me that by reminding me that in order to climb a tree, one needs to start at the bottom. I record his words and the need to have the strength, maatla, the perseverance, hotlelelo, and the courage, mofolofolo, to clamber right up to the top. I record his words till today, that wonderful oral culture where stories and metaphors transfer wisdom. So what are the attitudes and attributes to strive for that I believe have stood the test of time and that have helped give me strength, courage to persevere? All our pathways in life are determined by decisions and choices that have their consequences, mostly predicted, but more often unintended or serendipitous. So how to make those right choices in life is the real challenge. So as a grandfather, an old professor, and as a doctor, I can't resist giving a little advice, a sort of prescription. Common sense and integrity is a lethal combination, and truth is way more complicated than it seemed when we were young. There isn't just one truth, that's our truth, but other people who inhabit our story have their own truths as well, and Jung said that wisdom accepts that all things have two sides, and maybe even three sides to a dispute, where the truth lies somewhere in the middle. And truth is now confusingly undermined with false news and doctored images, and I suspect that finding the truth will be one of the real challenges that you will have to face in your lives. In dealing with people, which is one of the most important life skills you'll need, remember that in saying stuff to them, check that it is true, consider whether it's necessary to say, and whether it is kind. Encourage feedback and don't fear criticism. You know, if people stop talking, it means they've stopped listening and they've simply lost interest in you. So always ask the question, how am I doing? Try to defer gratification. Give every impulsive decision some thought first. We each have a time view, a way of thinking about our place in the past, present, and future that determines our decisions and priorities. This is the so-called concept of timefulness. And we can change that perspective to a longer view that helps us to look ahead to future with greater clarity, with generosity, and even with hope. But nobody likes to be told you can't have it all. But a painful truth is much more useful than a comforting falsehood. And the truth frees us from fruitlessly trying to get what we want and lets us concentrate on what we need. Follow your dreams, seize the opportunities when they arise. Some believe that destiny is written, others see destiny as an opportunity. Should you choose the wrong road, go back to the crossroads and start again. At least you will have eliminated the wrong one. Take a few chances, seek adventure, and follow your heart as well as your mind. Care for your mind and body. As a doctor, I've seen so many devastating effects of the wrong lifestyle choices and substance abuse within family, friends, and patients' lives. And remember to care for your own sense of well-being. Practice mindfulness that we never heard of when we were studying as medical students. Work hard at learning not to worry. Don't fear the future. One of the most destructive of all emotions is worry. And remember, a problem is only a problem if you do something about it. Once you've tried and If you are not able to do something about it, accept it. If things can't be changed, just accept it. Treasure your family and friends. Don't neglect your creativity. And contribute to society. Don't just take from it. Our well-being depends on society's well-being. Give back to the school as old boys. Some of you will teach here. There are future headmasters amongst you right now. In life, real happiness comes from giving and not just from taking. And unsolicited random acts of kindness are what makes each day sparkle. Find your spirit and your soul. So many people forget that they have these. Choose your own way, but try not to neglect it. It helps you make the right decisions, and we all need strength and support during difficult times in life, which are sadly an unavoidable part of it. So, the world is your oyster. There are so few islands of sanity and sanctity in the world. This school is one of them. Treasure it and treasure your teachers as your mentors. We have so much to be proud of as South Africans. My worldview, after having lived and worked in England, where South Africans are well respected, is that as proud as it is tied up in convention, traditions, and vested interest, whereas South Africa has its cultural richness, its newfound freedom, opportunities to explore and do things differently. Think with real pride of yourselves and treasure the opportunities that you have. Boys High will give you a really good start, help you to formulate your dreams, and could help you to achieve a great finish. I'd like to thank you for your welcoming friendship and for allowing us old boys to share the special assembly with you. Don't forget the wisdoms of the past in the relentless pursuit of the new. One of the wonderful things about growing older is that conversations no longer have to be transaction-based. They're more likely to be honest, even if events and achievements are rather exaggerated. I must say I would have liked to have shared one more metaphor with Chief Marashani, as I'm fortunate in that I enjoy long-distance walking. And I would have liked to have shared this idea with him, that when a path is difficult, we see too much ground. When it is easy, we see too little. And as Chief Marashani bade farewell to me, he said, Sipela Gabotsi, travel safely, travel well on your pathways in life. So on behalf of our class of 63, I pray you'll all be able to attend your 60th reunions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hay, for those wise words, and I'm sure there are many pearls of wisdom that the boys can take away with them from today. We move across to the musical item for our assembly. We'll be entertained this morning by the Clarinet Ensemble. They'll be playing a piece called O Lady Be Good by George Gershwin. Thank you very much, boys. We now move across to the devotional side of our assembly. And the hymn that has been chosen for today by the class of 1963 is hymn number 20, O God our help in ages past.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Later today, we will be paying respects to those from our school who perished in World Wars I and II. Also important part of the proceedings of this reunion today is to acknowledge the passing of those with whom we shared the bounty of the school 60 years ago. You may be interested to know that from our group, 16 boys passed on. In different ways, they would have touched our lives, often without us realizing it at the time. We need to be mindful that their close friends and families continue to miss them, their presence, and long for them to come back home. One boy that I would like to highlight, whose contribution to the school was significant, was Ricky Pavolda, who was vice head of the school. A very good sportsman. He should be here with us today. So, let us be silent now, and for a short time, bow your heads and remember absent friends. Thank you.
Let us pray. O Lord God of truth, whom to know is everlasting life and to serve his perfect freedom, grant that we may draw near to thee in thought, word, and deed. Inspire us with the love of thy creatures and thy laws, that in all humility and teachableness, with patience and understanding, by honest and earnest labor, we may seek after knowledge as a blessing that cometh from thee. Whether it be our part to teach or learn, to rule or obey, make us feel thy presence in our several duties, filling us with reverence for the beauty and wonder of thy universe, and pouring on us a spirit of justice, gentleness, and mutual goodwill. Thus, by thy grace, may we so use this house of learning that we may prepare our powers of body, mind, and spirit to advance the good of man and the glory of God. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace today and forevermore. Please stand for the singing of 40 Years On. Of them one with another.
Please remain standing while staff and old boys leave.